Good evening, Arkport. Let me start by saying thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to go over a couple things first, just as some more people jump on to the live stream. Hopefully you can see that I've already posted a comment to the Facebook and YouTube sites. And in that comment, you can find a link to all of the slides that I'll be going over to tonight. We've had one presentation, and that was last Wednesday. This is our second. We actually do have another in-person presentation this Wednesday. And what I have been doing is, as we've gotten more questions, different questions, I've been adding to this slide deck. So we will make sure that the slide deck, if you don't get the link tonight, we will make sure that's on our website and easily found. So please, even after tonight, take a look back at the slide deck because more information will be added. So the second thing is, this is going to stay on Facebook and YouTube. We will put links with the slide deck. So even if you want to come back and take a look at the presentation tonight, or if you want to share it with anybody else, it is going to be available on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll make sure those links are there. Just like you can hopefully see the comment that I posted in the chat, at any point you can ask a question in the chat as well. So what I'm going to do is run through my slides, and I'm aware that some of you might be watching on a phone, a small tablet, so I'll try to do my best of explaining what's on the slides. But please, at any point, post a comment, post a question. I will do my best to catch them in real time. But even at the end, after the presentation is done, I will go back and go through them and I can answer them. So don't hesitate to post a question, especially if you want me to go back over something or something's not clear on a slide. Go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is jump into the presentation and we'll go from there. Okay, so again, thank you for joining us tonight. And for whatever reason you are joining us, I do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. And there are a lot of misconceptions going around about Arkport's fiscal position. And I just thank you for coming to the source and being curious enough to give us some of your time to get some questions. I believe for most of you, the reason you are here is either hearing about the fiscal stress designation from other people or reading the newspaper article that was in the Tribune. So I really wanted to start with discussing what that fiscal stress designation means. And so on the slide, you can see the purpose of the fiscal stress designation from the comptroller is really to make sure that there is transparency between public agencies and the community. So you can see feedback to leaders, state officials, and taxpayers about fiscal stress conditions, helping them prioritize needs, understand trade-off, and make tough decisions. So that is exactly what has happened. The fiscal stress designation is maybe an early warning system. It is not meant as if a district was truly in trouble, they would be getting more than a fiscal stress designation. So it really is to make sure that public entities are being open and transparent with their communities. And at the bottom there, you can see there's a couple different things that can put a district on the fiscal stress designation system. And I highlighted the year-end fund balance, because that is the reason Arkport was or is on the moderate level of the stress designation. Now, the year-end fund balance has to do, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's what is your cash position at the end of the year. Every district is allowed to carry 4% of their budget year to year as an emergency fund. And we spent ours last year. And so if I go to our next slide, so with that fiscal distress designation, one of the misconceptions that has happened this school year is that last school year, this school year, and next school year are all being lumped into one. And so I really wanted to clearly go through what is happening year by year. The fiscal stress designation of moderate is for the 21-22 school year, last school year. We got that because we overspent our budget, and to cover the overspending, we had to use our 4% fund balance, among other funds. So that was last year. That was for the fiscal year 21-22. This year, the 22-23 school budget is on track. We are back where we are supposed to be, and we are projecting to have a fund balance at the end of this school year. So yes, there was a correction that needed to be made for last year, but it is not affecting this school budget. And it's somewhat confusing because the comptroller's report does come out that year after they're reporting on. So I can understand why people got confused about, well, is the district in trouble right now? And I've heard the comments like, is the district losing money right now, or are we bleeding money? And we are not. The fiscal designation was for last year. And I'll go through some of the corrections that we've made, some of the corrections the board has required, but that designation is for the 21-22 school year. During our last meeting, our in-person meeting, somebody asked the question of, can a district go on to this fiscal designation in 1 year? And the answer is yes. And in the same way, they can come off in 1 year. So I am projecting, I am not guaranteeing, I don't do that, but the projection is we will be off the fiscal designation for this school year. So when the report comes out again next year, we should be off. So last year, we're on the fiscal stress list because of the overspending of the budget. This year, our budget is right where it's supposed to be. We cut back on the budget. When the district became aware of the overspending in the summer, we put things in place to make sure that we were not overspending this year. We are in a strong financial position for the 22-23 school year. Next year, we have started talking about the budget, and it is a tough budget year for next year. We are all aware of the rising costs of everything. Inflation, the consumer price index is around 8%. So next year, we've had to really think about what are our priorities in the budget, and we are planning cuts in programs and positions. But that is due to the rising costs for next year. It is not due to the designation of last year. And again, I can understand why this is confusing. And we have been working on this the entire year. But I can also take responsibility if we have not made, or we haven't painted a clear enough picture for the community. And again, I can understand where the confusion comes from. So that's last year, this year, and next. So we go through some of the answers, and I do have to give credit to community members who have come forward and asked these questions. All these slides are built around the questions that I have received from community members. And I really appreciate that. Go back to thanking you guys for being here, because while you might not agree with every single answer I'm going to give tonight, I would rather us have a discussion about the merits of the real answers rather than misconceptions. So this slide deck is built by your questions. If there are questions tonight that aren't answered in the slides, I'll build them in for the next presentation. So, did we spend the district savings? That's another question that I had from the public. So we overspent the budget last year. we had to use our 4% fund balance to cover that overspending. Now, that is different. We did not spend all of our savings. We spent our 4% fund balance. And if you look at this graph, this shows our unencumbered fund balance. That's what the state calls the 4% that all districts are allowed to carry year to year. And it is truly meant for emergencies. And there is also no way to spend it. If you do not have this money, you are put on the list for the comptrollers. So it's there for emergencies. And what we ended up spending it on was our response to COVID. So you can see this is variable year to year because it's the cash left over at the end of the year. So we have gone up every year. This is a year behind. One of the other issues we had was the year before. So we overspent the budget in the 21-22 school year. That was the second year of the pandemic. You can see we were carrying a much bigger unencumbered fund balance the year before. This is another this is a miscalculation on my part. I thought the second year of the pandemic was going to be easier than the first. So the year before we overspent the budget, the district put $900,000 into our actual savings accounts. So we took money that would have been available to help offset the extra costs last year and put them into savings accounts where we couldn't touch them. Again, that is me underestimating really the magnitude of what was going to happen to us in the second year of the pandemic. So you can see we've traditionally always had a balance. This last year, we spent that fund balance. That's why we are on the comptroller's fiscal stress, and we are projecting to have that fund balance back for next year, meaning we would come off the comptroller's fiscal stress designation. So we did not spend our savings. We spent our fund balance, which is there for emergency spending. So where did the money go? This is our top 10 overexpensed accounts. So while I do not want to diminish the significance of spending our reserve, our 4% unencumbered fund balance, all of this spending went to the district's response to COVID-19. It really shows the measure at which we put everything we had towards supporting our faculty, staff, and students over the last 2 years. The computer-assisted instruction is the largest overspending, which is $425,000. Now, that is through BOCES. That was planned overexpending because what we knew was going to happen is that we would get more aid the following year. So that overexpenditure last year actually produced $300,000 of more aid for us this year. So while the total sum was larger than we were expecting, some of these were planned expenditures. So the computer-assisted instruction, if you go back to where this spending started, it would have been in July of 2021. At that part of the pandemic, we did not know whether we were going to be in person. We didn't know whether we were going to be on computers every day. So a lot of this spending was preparation for a return to school, but it was a preparation for many different types of coming back to school. I am proud of our response. We were back 100% in person for the second year of the pandemic, but that was a heavy lift. So you can see our special education costs were up. Our professional development was up. Again, we had to pivot very quickly to online learning. There was lots of support that had to be there. Our student support services, we increased. We saw, and when I say student behavior supports under that, that doesn't mean it was all misbehaving. The pandemic had a wide range of effects on our students, and we had to pull in resources. BOCES instruction, this might have been virtual learning, school curriculum, that was above budget. Substitutes were $83,000 over budget. Now that is, the state mandated that we had 3 buckets of 10 days each of paid leave. But then you compound the number of absences for COVID leave with normal sickness and those substitute costs. And we were happy to pay them to keep everybody safe and healthy, but they added up. Our summer enrichment, that was our first summer of the program. We really didn't, we had a general idea of the costs, but that was our first year of the program. So that was our learning year. We have brought those costs down at this point, but to provide, now think that was the summer of 21, that was the first time that we could have all of our kids back together. So it was very important for us to have that summer program and provide the safety, the support to bring our kids back after they were split up so much the year prior. Staff trainings, staff supports, again, those all increased over the course of the school year. Athletics was over budget. A lot of the cost increases that we're seeing now really started last year for athletics, and we really pushed during the 21-22 school year to give our student athletes every opportunity they could have, just because they had lost so many. And then operations being the maintenance and the operation of the building was above. So these top 10 overexpensed items totaled $1.25 million. That I think is a measure of the supports that we put around our faculty, staff, and students. I want to point out here that anytime that there is publicly accessible supporting documentation, there will be a link at the bottom of these slides. So if you pull them up later, you can click on that slide, and that link will take you to the appropriation status, which is the spending report for the school year of 2022. So when we have publicly available data, we will link it on the slides. So it's trust but confirm, trust but verify. The information is there for you to look at yourself if you would like to. So we have these overexpensed items. That's what led to the overexpenditure of the budget, which led to us using the 4% fund balance. And going back to the question, did we spend the district savings? We did not. We spent the 4% fund balance. The district reserves, this is our true savings account. So our district reserves are specific to what they can be used for. Now, I'm not going to read this whole list. That can only be used for workers' compensation claims. We have a capital reserve here. That is our reserve for building projects, bus reserve. So we did not dip into these reserve accounts. You really can't without a specific purpose, but you can see the year ending June 30th, 2022, our reserve levels were at $3.4 million. So we did not spend our savings. We spent our 4% fund balance, which we had on hand. We didn't have to borrow any money. We didn't have to dip into our savings. That money we had in the district. So some of the other questions I received, why wasn't there oversight to prevent the budget from being overspent? I want to reinforce that there was and is oversight. What happened was the methods that have been used for many years, decades, to monitor our fund balance, to monitor our spending, did not hold up to the type and level of spending we had last year. So in a normal year, how we tracked spending on a monthly basis, how we balanced our accounts at the closing of the year worked. They did not work last year. So, and the oversight continued past that. Our auditors picked up the overspending in the 4% fund balance. They had alerted the district. We alerted the board. So while there was a breakdown in the accounting or the oversight, there were things in place that still caught it. So going back to the original intention of the fiscal stress report, it is to make sure everybody is on the same page. This is not a crisis level, this is a correction level. And so there were oversights. When this overspending and the level and the fact that we used our 4% fund balance became clear, the Board of Education held me responsible for putting in place a financial stability plan. So that oversight of the budget, the Board of Education did hold me responsible, is holding me responsible for making the corrections. So what is stopping this from happening again? The board asked us to put in place a financial stability plan that addresses our fund balance, which addresses the use of the fund balance. It puts more checks and balances into a yearly process to make sure we don't get to that spot again. Mrs. Carr, our business official, has worked very hard at, in the past, we balanced all of the accounts in May. We are doing that on a weekly and monthly basis now. So it is not, and so when I say the method used was good enough in the past, we are not reverting to that method. Our new method is in place for monitoring those funds, and it will stay in place. And so again, down at the bottom, you can see at the bottom of this, if you open up these slides later, you can there is a link to the financial stability plan, which was in place in October, has been running the entire year. And that's one of the reasons that on one of the previous slides, I am confident that we will have our reserve, our 4% fund balance back. It is because this financial stability plan has been running since October. Are we losing money right now? Going back to one of those questions that I received from the public. No, we are not losing money right now. So we are projecting to be under budget in our expenses approximately by $300,000. We are projecting our revenues to be over budget by approximately $500,000, which would leave us at end of the year balance of approximately $800,000 or 6.12%. Now, that is a large sum of money, but that is exactly where a district our size wants to be at the end of the school year. We want to come in under our expenses and have more revenues than we budgeted, because that balance at the end of the year helps fund the 4%, but that money can also go to our reserve accounts. So over time, we slowly build up that building reserve so that we can make a building project in the future affordable. Over time, we slowly put some of the excess funds at the end of the year into the bus reserve so we can always buy new buses. So we are not losing money right now. We are back where we have been traditionally. Last year was the anomaly. We are back where we need to be in a strong financial position for the current fiscal year. I'll remind everybody that's on here, feel free to throw a question in the chat whenever something comes up. There'll definitely be time at the end for questions, but please don't hesitate to ask at any point. So one of the other things that when all 3 years started to get tied together, there's this, is the district being wasteful? Are there too many positions and programs? And what this graph shows you is that Arkport is one of the most efficient districts in our BOCES. We have 21 districts in our BOCES, and you can see Arkport is right down here with our per student costs. Now I want to be clear, the state reports per student cost. They only take some of the things that are budgeted, and that's how they calculate the per student cost. What you're seeing on this graph right now is the total budget divided by the number of students. So it is a all-in cost of what drives student instruction. So we are showing we are one of the most efficient districts. And when we start talking about positions or programs, we have been successful over the last couple of years because of what we've put in place for our faculty, staff, and students. And once we start taking pieces away, what piece is going to make the difference in our program? So we are one of the most efficient districts in the BOCES. And on top of that, not only are we one of the most efficient districts in the BOCES, we have some of the highest Regents results in our BOCES as well. And I think when you pair these two things together, it's a really strong message of not only are we efficient, but in our being efficient, we are still getting great results out of our students. So in my opinion, we are not wasteful. We are being efficient with what we have, and our students are getting a high quality education. Are cuts being made to next year's budget because we have no money? This is another one of the misconceptions. Going back to that first slide of last year, this year, and next. There's a couple different reasons that we are proposing cuts for next year's budget. And the first one is our enrollment. We have grown over the last 6 years. We are still ahead of where we were a couple of years ago. Right now, we're around 470 students. Our low point was 5 or 6 years ago, and it was around 425 students. So we are growing, but what we've seen now is that growth has stopped and it's reversed a little bit. And in this graph, I just want to point out, this was last year's graduating seniors. So last year's graduating class had 37 students in it. They were replaced by a kindergarten class of 26. So we are replacing large classes with smaller classes. This year, we have one of our largest classes in recent history at 45. If we replace that with another class of 26, we're losing more students. So one of the reasons that we're proposing cuts for next year is we are trying to right size the programs we offer and the positions we have to our student population. And another thing that happened over the last 2 years is we had this COVID aid, this federal aid, and we did hire new positions. Part of that money was specifically for hiring positions to address learning loss. And now that we have one more year of that COVID aid, but we have to start getting back to a normal level of positions. And so that process starts now. Are cuts being made in next year's budget because we have no money? This is one of those hard truths about our budget next year, is that whether we're talking about tech support, positions, programs, we have, now it says surplus pandemic aid. We will use that money. We're not going to let it go to waste, but we're not applying that to positions. So we are getting $663,000 of pandemic aid next year. We are applying $465,000 of that to new positions, not new positions, but positions we've added over the last 2 years. We have surplus pandemic aid. And this is one of those tough truths. And this is why I'm glad we are all here tonight, because I would rather us have discussions on the merits of the facts rather than misconceptions. We have surplus pandemic aid next year that could go to support some of the proposed cuts in positions or programs, but it's not responsible to spend the money just because we have it. If the student population, if the demand for classes isn't there, we should not be spending that money. So The money is there. It'll be used to support other things, purchasing of equipment, supplies. It will be used, but it's another thing to use it for a position because that is a reoccurring cost. When the pandemic aid is gone, it would then be up to the district and the taxpayers to fill that hole. And so we are trying to be pragmatic. We are trying to get ahead of the loss of pandemic aid after next school year. Are cuts being made in next year's budget because we have no money? Again, no. Instructional positions are still at an all-time high with the proposed school budget for next year. So the dark blue along the bottom here are instructional positions. The light blue are all other positions. And so I have categorized instructional positions as the positions that are in the classroom. So that could be teachers, TAs, or aides. The all others, that would be all admin, that's bus drivers, that's maintenance, that's cafeteria staff. So you can see in 2019, we had 61 instructional positions in the classrooms. This year, we were at our highest at 70. In next year's budget, we are still looking at 66 instructional positions. So yes, we're proposing a drop of 4 instructional positions, and that's TAs, aides, teachers, but we are still ahead of where we were 5 years ago. And that is important. We are still providing a sound quality education, a small group instruction for our students. Another question that I had was, why is there a $600,000 deficit for next year? Now, during our budget development over the last couple months, I have been very transparent with our faculty, staff, and board about the difficulties of next year's budget and the rising costs. And so the way we plan our budget is we look at all the cost increases for the next year. We look at what those are. We look at what our revenue increases may be for the next school year. And then we have to balance it. And that happens every single school year. And what is happening for next school year is that we have not seen rising costs like this since 2008. And this has been a very difficult year. We have our salary increases. One of our biggest increases that we haven't seen for a while is a health insurance increase. Our career and technical education has increased dramatically. Other employee benefits, transportation. So when I was discussing this $600,000 deficit for the year, that was normal planning and just making people aware of the difficult decisions we're going to have to make the next year. I give an example here of what our employee benefits. Our budget is broken down into 5 categories: general support, maintenance of the building, district level administration. Then we have instruction, which is all of the things that go into teaching our students. We have transportation, employee benefits, and debt service. Here is an example of what the employee benefits look like. And I put that there as an example because you can see at the bottom, there isn't a link yet to the draft 23-24 budget because it's not complete. Just last week at our town hall meeting, we were discussing why, like, we had just received a number that day that changed our budget. We start getting budget numbers in November, and we really don't stop getting budget numbers until the middle of April. So I give you this example of what will be shared. This document, our full budget, is available every single year. We are going to make that more readily available so that you can see as a public, you can go through the whole document and see, well, where were those savings made up, right? If there's some proposed cuts, we are not proposing cuts to CTE. So being fully transparent about where those cuts are coming from, you will be able to see that that document. And so when that is board approved, which will be in the second half of April. That link at the bottom will be updated so you can see that. Okay, that was fast. That was a lot of information. I'm going to pause there. If there are any questions from anybody watching right now, feel free to start typing, putting them in. I will do my best to answer any question you have. If I can't ask it right away, then I will try to get that to you right as soon as possible. Sean Freeland, can the school district webpage be updated with the BOE meeting minutes? So let me do you a favor, Sean, as other people are typing in. I'm actually going to provide you the link right now. So there is a link on the webpage, and it is going to board docs. And that is under, if you go to our menu and go to About Us, and under School Board, there is a link for all of our documents. And so what I'll do for you right now is I will put that in the comments. And that is your link. That takes you to Arkport's Board Docs site that has all of the information from any board meeting for the past 5 years when we switched over. So, and if you have a specific question about something you're trying to find, Sean, then just let me know. But when you open up that website for board docs, there is a search feature in the upper right-hand corner that you can search for any keyword, and it will pull documents up that are related to your search. So if there's anybody else typing in right now, I'll just remind you that we do have another in-person meeting this Wednesday, and that is at 6 p.m. in the chorus room at Arkport. I'll be going over the same information. And we can go, and if there's anything else that is of interest, we can go from there as well. If there's anything else that comes up tonight, I will add those slides. Okay, we got another question from Lori Flights. In one of the slides, revenue was included. How does the school generate revenue? Thank you, Mrs. Flights. I'll go back to where we talk about revenues. I think it was another one. Sorry about the skipping around. Okay, I believe this is the question, Lori, where we talk about revenues. So we have a couple of different revenue sources. Our two major revenue sources are state aid. So state aid makes up, I'm going to off the top of my head, but this is in the budget presentations, which will be coming up. State aid makes around 60% of our budget. And then the other major category is our tax revenue. And so those are our two biggest components. Our tax revenue is around $3.5 million. Our state aid is around $6.5 to $7 million. And then we have other smaller sources. There's pilot programs or payments in lieu of taxes. Those come in. We have some fees when a different district sends a student to us for a class or a program or a special education program. We charge for that. We charge our out-of-district students. That's revenue source. There are some other minor revenue sources, but the two major revenue sources for this district are state aid and taxes. So when you think about it, our school taxes are one of the biggest one, and then our state aid comes from state taxes. So those are our two major sources of revenue. And when we go through, this is Flights, when we post the budget, there is a complete breakdown of our revenue sources as well. So when the budget is approved, you will be able to see every line of the budget, including the revenue and what all those sources are. Brittany Hainish, our athletic programs being cut at all for the next year's school budget. There are no plans to cut athletic programs for next year. We have a very good partnership with Canasarega, whereas there's a cost-sharing mechanism there between the two districts. It makes it affordable for both districts. One of the main priority of our Board of Education, their main priority is that as we look at finding efficiencies and finding cuts from last year, that our students need to be the last affected. And that is not completely possible, but there are no plans to cut athletics or our summer program or after school program or our extracurriculars. I believe, and the board believes, that student participation in extracurriculars is one of the most important things for academic success. If our kids are connected outside of the classroom, they're going to be more connected inside the classroom. And so I have received that question, Brittany, about what the cuts are. So not only will you get to see the budget in general, line by line, we will also create kind of a simplified, where are most of the funds being saved for next year. We will make that available for the community as well. I'm going to jump back to the last slide, as anybody else might have questions. Again, I will stick around for as long as any questions come in. Please remember this is recorded. So if you do want to, if you think you might miss something, remember it's recorded. You can always come back to it. So please feel free, and also shoot me any questions whenever you need to about this process. The best thing is to ask questions and at least get the correct information, because there is a lot of misconceptions going on. All right, Sean Freeland. The pandemic began in March 2020-ish. The school resumed in-person instruction in 2021 school year. What became so unexpected in 21-22 school year that was so unpredictable that caused a 12% over budget? Good question, Sean. It really was the second year of the pandemic. I really have to go back to, we were not, we did not have an idea of where the state was going to push us in that second year. And where I underestimated the impact of the pandemic on the second year, where we kind of made things happen that first year, when the over expenditures came when we realized how much was actually needed in the second year of the pandemic. That was what was unexpected. And there was also, I've spoken about legacy costs in some of the newsletters and the articles. There were costs of the pandemic that only caught up to us in all districts, to be honest, in the second year of the pandemic. We did more work in the second year of the pandemic than we did in the first. And that was unexpected. And the amount of effort and resources that we had to put in place for the second year of the pandemic was unexpected. The first year of the pandemic, we had our entire elementary school in person every day, but we had our high school every other day. So remember, in the second year of the pandemic, we brought everyone back full in person, and that was a heavy lift. So we got another question, being 180K under budget. Being 125K under budget looks great, but in reality, it means you've overcharged taxpayers, withheld funds for teachers in their classrooms, and way off target with projected expenses. What will be done to balance the budget? Zach Lincoln, thank you for the question. In order for a district to run properly, the rule of thumb is anywhere from you over project expenses by 2 to 4%, and you under project your revenues by 2 to 4%. A district that does not end the school year with a fund balance, again, go back to the very beginning of this presentation. We are on the comptroller's fiscal stress report because we did not end the school year with a fund balance. So we did not, every district in New York State works towards ending the school year with a fund balance. And that money goes to our 4% that we get to carry every year, our emergency fund, and it goes to fund our reserves. If we didn't have a surplus at the end of the year where we could fund our bus reserves, our capital reserves, our emergency repair reserves, all of those costs would then be handed down to the taxpayer whenever we had an emergency repair, whenever we had to buy a bus. So it is strong and appropriate and recommended accounting practices to end the year with a fund balance. So that's what every district looks to do. The fact that we didn't have a fund balance is why we're on the comptroller's report. So although it is not required to have a 4% fund balance at the end of the year, the comptroller obviously puts you on the list if you don't have one. So I understand the way it looks about overcharging taxpayers. Our faculty and staff have been, they are still getting their supplies. Over the last 3-4 years, we were one of the first districts in the area that started buying all school supplies for students. And that was based on my belief that we are already taxing you. We can get those school supplies at a better rate. So we are doing everything we can to better use our community's taxes, but it is absolutely critical that we end the year with a surplus. It makes everything run smoother. It makes the fact that we do not have to drive taxes up when we have to buy something or build something. And I would be happy. The other thing that I should say here is that I have had community members come in and meet with me personally. I would be happy to have as many meetings about this as necessary. So Zach, if you would like to come in and meet and get a little bit more detail about why we have to have that surplus at the end of the year, I'd be happy to meet with you. So I think we've been on for about an hour. I will stick around, but I'm going to go back to, if you feel like you're going to miss a question or something that's being said, this is being recorded. It will be on Facebook and YouTube forever. So feel free. I don't see any more questions coming in, but I'll hang around for a couple minutes. And again, thank you for joining us. Please, I will put actually my email address in the chat for everybody. Do not hesitate to ask any questions, set up a meeting with me. I would much rather us have the real information and have discussion about what that means and what it means for the school and taxpayers and the budget and positions and programs. I'm just going to finish again by thanking you guys for joining me, and hopefully some misconceptions were cleared up tonight regarding last year, this year, and next year's fiscal position for the district. So I put my email in the chat. Please, again, there's no question that I'm not willing to answer. regarding the fiscal state and what we're doing and how we are correcting last year and making ourselves stronger for the next year. So don't hesitate. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes, two or 3 minutes here, and then we'll sign off. Thank you for joining us. I'll wait to see if there's any questions that come up in the chat.